Hi, welcome to the Gear Garage. My name is Zach, and this is my little show about whitewater things. And in today's episode, I want to talk about some of the dangers of boating in high water, some of the dangers in boating in rivers that are rising, and some of the decision making we do when we're trying to decide whether or not to go based on weather and flow conditions. So, first of all, high water boating is more dangerous when the river is bigger than it normally is, or nearing its banks, or just like higher volume than you're used to. There's a lot of dangers. And the river changes. There aren't as many eddies, so it's hard to pull over and regroup everybody. Some of the swims can be way longer because the river is moving faster and people separate from the boat much faster, so swims can be longer. It can take a lot longer to rescue people. The features change. Places where there maybe was a really nasty hole could be washed out and a new hole exists somewhere else. And in general, when there are holes, they're bigger. And so the odds of flipping and having some sort of catastrophic problem get much bigger. And it's generally colder, and the river is brownish. Usually you can't always see the rocks and different things, so it has a different color that you're not used to. And in general, higher volume rivers like this are pretty dangerous and something we need to take seriously, and at a minimum have a good team with you who's boating well together, so if there is a problem, it can be handled. Also, when rivers are rising, they're really dangerous for a number of reasons. One is if the river hasn't risen for a while, all the stuff that's fallen next to the bank is now floating down the river. So you could be dodging logs, big trees, all kinds of debris. So you want to be really careful, like on a rising river, that there's not stuff coming down with you. And that's especially the case if the river hasn't been that high for a long time. If it's been low all summer and it's the first high water of the year, there's going to be stuff coming down. If it's been a month or two, there's probably going to be stuff coming down. And so, or if it's going to reach a new peak, that's something to be very careful of, because there's all kinds of stuff on the shore to come down, or trees that have fallen since then to be careful of. It's a major hazard. Also, with wood coming down, wood can get lodged in channels. So you can be coming down a river at high water, and all of a sudden there's a log across the river. And I've seen this multiple times. When the river's rising, and we were on a few days before it rose, a brand new piece of wood that's super dangerous, and that's something we really take seriously. You definitely want to have a high level of skill if you're doing this, because this is a possibility. Also, you don't know the peak. There may be a forecast of what the peak's going to be, and we'll talk about forecast here in a minute, but that forecast may not be correct. It could say it's going to get to a level that you're comfortable with, but it could go way higher depending on the conditions. And that's something to take really seriously. If the river's on the rise, you don't know the peak. And if the weather changes or the forecast is bad, the river could get way higher and create a whole bunch more problems. And finally, the river can be thick and viscous and really dark. It's a different type of river because of all the sediment coming down. A lot of times these rivers, if they get really high, there's all kinds of sediment that has fallen, been on the ground since the last time it got high, and it's bringing all that stuff down. Sometimes it smells like pesticides because it's bringing all kinds of potentially gross stuff down, and the river just feels different, and it's something that is unnerving the first time you do it, and something you want to be careful of. So when you're planning your trip, you want to look at what the flow is and a little bit of the projection and what the weather is going to do, and make the best educated guess you can. To do this, you have a few tools you can use to make a good decision. Hydrographs, we're super lucky to have these. They show what the flow has done and what it's trending to do. There's also prediction. These predictions, I say, are for entertainment purposes only. They are rarely accurate. They give you a sense of what might happen, but please do not depend on them to make decisions. They're wrong all the time. Next is look at snow. If there's snow on the ground and there's rain on snow, that will cause the river to rise fast, especially warm rain on a lot of snow. So pay close attention to snow. I don't think these graphs understand snow and how fast they can melt. Also, just talk to locals. If somebody lives in the area, call them. They understand the watershed usually. I understand the Hood River watershed really well. I do a lot of trips on the Illinois River. I understand that one really well. But if I go somewhere far away, I might call somebody and say, hey, what do you think is going to happen? Because people have a good idea if they live there. Also, just look at the ground. Is it saturated? Has it rained lately? If it's been raining a lot, the ground's saturated. The water's just going to run off pretty quickly. And think about upstream dams. If there's a dam upstream that might spill, it's been filling for a while, all of a sudden it's almost full, and water comes over the top, that could cause the flow to change really quickly. And finally, just use your own intuition and experience. I mean, you have a gut feeling sometimes, and for me, I would just trust that experience. So here's a graph I want to share with you guys of what I'm going through right now on the Hood River. This is the river hydrograph and prediction for a river I'd really like to paddle tomorrow, the Hood River. I haven't paddled it since last spring. It got really high once this fall, and it hasn't been high for a few weeks, and I'm really wanting to go paddle it. And I'm seeing it's at a nice level right now, 5.4 feet. This would be great to paddle it right now. And tomorrow is supposed to peak as high as 8 feet. And as I look at this, I see a rising river, and I'm a little bit concerned that it could get bigger than that, because 8 feet is a good level for me, but much higher, and I start getting nervous because of the continuous nature of the river. So I'm checking the weather. The weather shows a 100% chance of rain tonight, almost an inch, which is a lot of rain, and 0.7 inches tomorrow. So it's going to rain a lot, and the temperatures are pretty high. It's been around 20 degrees here lately, and so a high of 47 means the rain's going to come down warm, and we have a good amount of snow on the ground. Here in Hood River, there's like 3 to 6 inches, but in the headwater, there's like 2, 3, 4, 5 feet, and so I know that rain's going to come down on snow. And the hydrograph doesn't really understand that. It doesn't know about the snow, how much snow there is, and relationship between rain and snow. As far as I understand, it doesn't. And so I'm guessing the river is going to get to the 10, 11, 12, 13 foot range just based on what I'm seeing. And so I want to be clear, these hydrographs give you an idea of what might happen, but I wouldn't make a decision to go based on this. You could see this graph, drive 3 hours, and expect it to be 8 feet, and have it be 13, and have to make a decision based on that. So for me, I'm going to choose not to go tomorrow because I'm worried about high water, cold water, because the snow melts. And because it may get higher than it has been this year, there could be tons of wood coming down. I'm going to wait for that peak to happen and wait for it to come on the decline, looks like on Wednesday afternoon. And that should be pretty ideal conditions because the river is dropping. I'm a big fan of going boating when the river's on the drop after the peak instead of just before the rise. So when I'm trying to decide whether I want to do a run that's really high and or rising, I think about heuristic traps. This is not a class about heuristic traps, but these are 7 traps our brain falls into and makes quick decisions for us. And there's 7 of them. They have mnemonic facets. You may or may not remember that. I always forget it, so I have to Google it every time. But I think about these quite a bit when I'm trying to decide whether or not to do something. And the first one's familiarity. And this the idea is if you've done something a lot, you should be fine. Even if the river's higher than you've seen or rising faster than you've seen, just because you know it well doesn't mean you're necessarily going to do well that day based on the conditions. The next trap is acceptance and choosing to do a run for some sort of social acceptance among your friends. You don't want to not go because your friends might think less of you, or somebody you respect is going and you don't want them to lose respect for you. So going just to be accepted in the group is a bad reason or a trap we can fall in to do these things. Next is commitment. We put a lot of time and money and our energy into doing the run, so we should just go. Like if you drove 5 hours to get there and the river's too high or rising, you've made too much of a commitment in terms of your time and money. You might just go anyway, which could be a bad decision. Next is expert halo, and this is when there's somebody who's a perceived expert. They don't even have to actually be an expert. They can just be perceived an expert, chooses to do a thing, and everybody follows. And you may have somebody you really look up to who may make a decision for you that might be bad. So you want to be really careful in these high water runs, these rising water runs, to really think about, are you following somebody who's not as big of an expert as they might need to be to make this decision. The next one is tracks and scarcity. This whole idea of mnemonic or heuristic traps was designed for skiers dealing with avalanches. So tracks is like ski tracks. But the idea is it a rare time to do this? Is this was it like the little Klickitat where it flows one time a year? And it was only one time a year you can do it. It's a scarce run to get on. Should we just go anyway, even though it's higher than we think? Or do you have a permit for the Selway or the Middle Fork? These permits are scarce. Should we go anyway, even though the river is too high or rising too fast for us to get on? And this is actually related to commitment. Maybe you drove all the way there. You have a once in a lifetime permit. You have commitment and scarcity at the same time. And last is social facilitation. The idea is that when you're in a group, decisions get made a little bit differently. So there's sort of a group think that happens, and people may follow the group instead of making their own decision. I think social facilitation and acceptance are very related. If everybody's doing it, how am I possibly going to back out? You kind of want to go with the flow, what everybody's doing. So I kind of look at these things and make those decisions. If you're going to go do a run, like I said, if it's high water or the river's rising or you're nervous about the conditions, that's dangerous. These are dangerous rivers. And I just ask everybody to just take some time and choose not to go sometimes just to be safer. This is an interesting topic. I love to know what you guys think. If those of you that are experts out there, please add in your 2 cents. Like, tell me what you think. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I missed a danger or something people should think of. Please add in there. And those of you that have questions, ask questions. I love having questions. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you next time.